Live. After some technical difficulties on my end. Hey, Alex, how are you?
Hey Jen, doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing well. Cannot complain. I see some people rolling in. Really excited to have you here today. You have a very interesting story, so I'm super excited for you to be able to tell that here on the Divergent Talent Alchemist. For those of you who are joining and you're new here, I'm Jen Benford. I'm the writer and I host live sessions here on DTA. And Alex Katsulis, did I get your last name right? My maiden name is a K, and nobody would ever get my last name right, and it would drive me crazy. And now I'm feel like I'm not saying it right.
It was close. It's Katsulis.
Katsulis. All right. Apologies on that. But welcome. Alex is a former patent attorney, and he's here to share his story today about how he got to know his brain. We hope that you'll walk away with some tips for yourself and getting to know your own brain. And just quick disclaimer that we know everybody's brain's different. A lot of the discussion is based on research and lived experience, right? So, welcome, Alex. Kicking the baton, or I'm throwing the baton rather, to you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your why and your Substack for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I'm Alex Katsulis. What we said. I've been on somewhat of a lifelong journey. It seems that I only ended up discovering back in like 2019, 2020. Um, I was a patent attorney at the time, but it goes much deeper than just work. It was like a full life burnout that happened, and a lot of just exploration, trying to figure out why I was feeling what I was feeling, and trying to get through this block that I had on just it didn't feel like I could live my life the way that I wanted to. Something was holding me back. And so through that whole journey, I came upon this philosophy perspective, however you want to call it, that we can talk a little bit more today. That really helped flip the switch for me. That really helped me realize that all of the fighting I had been doing with my brain was not doing what I thought it was doing. It was doing the opposite, holding me back more, and wasn't letting me actually live. And so it was understanding that relationship with my brain, and understanding my emotions and feelings, and all of that, that really kind of helped me move forward. And so now I quit my job in February, no longer a patent attorney. And I'm starting this new journey as a life coach and Substack author. And so I'm still pretty early in it. I haven't started offering the my life coaching quite yet. That's probably later in the summer. Still in a training course. But you can catch me at my Substack for now is called Do Selfish Well. And that also plays into this whole perspective philosophy I have on a relationship with your brain, and how that plays into the rest of your life. I'm building out my paid subscription. I got a guide coming out on Sunday, but otherwise, all the articles are free aside from some of my good ones that I put behind the paywall. But otherwise, happy to chat with anybody and about anything we talk about here today, or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had the privilege of reading three of your articles actually. And before we get into that, because I know um, we want to cover some of the material there. Can you tell me a little bit more, or tell us a little bit more about the fighting with your brain and kind of what that looked like? And then also, I have a second follow up question. Um, for Do Selfish Well, like how did you? I'd imagine that's tying into your brand. How did you land on that name? Tell us more about that.
I somehow just lost my screen. There we go. Okay, you turned black. um, and that just threw me off. What
Yeah,
was the
I got
what, what
no, no, no. It was a long-winded one. Anyway, I asked you kind of a two-part question. One in terms
life?
of
Yeah.
the fighting with your brain, and then how did you land on Do Selfish Well as your Substack brand?
Yeah, so the fighting with my brain is a lot of um, just feeling anxious about something and feeling that I'm not supposed to feel that way. Like I have all these other reasons to not feel anxious about this interview, this date, whatever it is. Um, and just like everyone's telling me to just or like the messaging that you hear is like just be confident, like you got to just be more confident in everything. And so it's all these feelings where it's like I see all these things that I have and that I am and all of this that should, like, why aren't I confident? And so it's a lot of just like telling my brain to be like, stop feeling this anxiety, like there's no reason to feel this, I shouldn't be feeling this. Or just some other compulsions to like people pleasing or perfectionism. Just so many other just different patterns and habits that my brain had that I didn't want, didn't like, weren't helping me. And just trying to kind of like shove them away to try to convince my brain that I didn't need to feel those any of those emotions, any of those feelings. So it was a lot of just feeling like my brain was the enemy, feeling like my emotions and feelings were something that I had to overcome and fight and get past.
Yeah.
Um, and then in terms of your second question, I love my name. I love Do Selfish Well, and so the the way that I had come across that was or the way that it came to me was actually I was trying to write a book, and then my book turned into my newsletter. So it really started as the title of a book, um, and we can get into more of this, but it's the general idea that our brains are naturally self-serving. That I believe it's a biological fundamental truth that they're self-serving. I've changed to self-serving other than selfish just because I feel like selfish has more of a handcuffed negative connotation with it that might make it more difficult for people to actually hear my message. They might just get stuck there. So I've changed it to self-serving. And the the way that the way that I think about that is the fact that our brains are always self-serving means they're always trying to help us. They're not connected to anyone else. They're only connected to us. And so emotions, feelings, everything that our brains send is for the purpose of keeping us alive, helping us survive, helping us um, increase our well-being or maximize our well-being. And with that, there's certainly times like that I was experienced where our brains are not actually helpful. They're trying to help us. They only care about us. They're trying to help us, but it doesn't mean that they are always helpful. Because they can be programmed on information from childhood, from stuff we learned in the media, from stuff we learned in school, from all sorts of things. And everyone's brain is different too, so you might like just naturally biologically have certain inclinations to different things. Um, and so it's understanding that it's understanding um, where is my brain not actually helping me, and how can I help my brain better help me. And so that's kind of the idea of do selfish well is figuring out how to use your self-serving brain as the greatest tool you have in your life because it is. And it's how do you do selfish well? How do you use this selfish, self-serving brain um, well?
I love it. When a bit of a deep question, and I know that you've probably thought a lot about this, just given the nature of your work and the direction that you're headed, when did you realize that you are not your thoughts? Because and I'll say this too. I remember from a personal perspective when I figured that out and I was reading a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer and I was like, "Wait a minute, this concept is crazy." This was a couple years back, because I, much like you, I am a former people pleaser. I ruminate a lot, as many of us do, and so just curious, like, what was the moment that you recognized that? And then, I guess the second part to the question is how do you navigate and stay grounded um, in those moments where you feel a pull?
Yeah. 1 second, sorry. My monitor just went black again, and I don't and I
That's okay.
can't get it to re-come up.
If you need to
Alright.
just oh, there you are.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. I'll just use my laptop screen now.
Oh,
So so yeah, when did I realize that? Somewhere along the journey. I don't yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure I can
can
pinpoint it,
pinpoint.
but yeah, but it was definitely a book or a podcast or something, along those lines. I wanna say that I came to that before I, came into this whole, do selfish well kind of perspective philosophy. Um, but it's one thing that I learned that I kinda played around with in my head and came to think of later on after I had already started this um, that our thoughts, I believe, are we can actually distinguish between our automatic thoughts and our voluntary self-talk. And so our automatic thoughts, the thoughts that pop into consciousness like within mere like hundredths of a second, like we have no control over those. That's just those thoughts are just our brain trying to help us. Um, and it's we are not those thoughts because we are not our brains, which we can talk about more later if we get into that more. And so the automatic thoughts, yes, we are not those. The stuff that pop in your head immediately after a trigger. Our voluntary self talk, the stuff that we say to ourselves, that isn't it wouldn't exist in our mind unless we initiated it. That stuff is us. It is how we are choosing to talk to ourselves. It is how we what we are deciding to say um, in our minds. And so, making that distinction, I think, is critical between recognizing the thoughts that are appearing immediately that you have no control over, and the ones that you are saying to yourself.
I that is really profound, and you were getting hearts, by the way, as you were speaking, um, because I think, like, to your point earlier, we have this talk all the time, like, nature versus nurture, right? And you're talking about, like, a little bit of both, and I guess, like, our belief system, we develop that through childhood, right? And then we in our home, and then we go to school, and then we go to work, and we're told things about ourselves, and so I'm not sure if that was your experience too, but for me, I really had to unlearn, like, a lot of what people were saying about me, and, like, and sit with myself and understand, like, okay, this is who Jen actually is, because you have more control over that. Like, you take the pen back. You take the narrative back about yourself because you know who you are. But I think a lot of times we can get clouded by other these thoughts come from somewhere. Like you said, we can't stop them, but they may come from feedback that we've received that maybe wasn't delivered in a kind manner, by a manager or a parent or, whoever in your life that's delivering that. And when, nobody knows you, Alex, than better than you know yourself. And I'm not sure if that resonates with you. I'm kind of on a soapbox now, but that's been kind of my experience with it.
For sure, yeah, yeah. I think that's, I mean, self growth in a nutshell. In my mind, is becoming aware of things, unlearning the stuff that's no longer helping, and then putting new stuff in its place that you wanna teach your brain instead. For
Yeah.
sure.
What did that process look like for you?
Reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of podcasts, going to a lot of therapy sessions, just doing a lot of me dates, just like going to dinner and just like thinking about stuff, going to a movie that I just wanted to see in the theaters, like doing a lot of doing a lot of solo dates and just kind of figuring out like what do I actually like to do? Like what is actually me underneath all of this other stuff that I've been feeling and doing and going through and um so it was a lot of that. It was a lot of and it didn't happen immediately. Like no one will have it happen immediately. It was a period of years of where it's like this piece appeared, and now we kind of want to explore that and figure out like what is this, and then maybe months later this other thing appeared, and then you want to kind of dig into that. That's how it kind of went a lot for me. Was it was like my therapist mentioned perfectionism, and I'm like, all right, it would well, actually before that it was vulnerability and like, okay, who's vulnerability? Brene Brown. Like read all the Brene Brown stuff. And then it was then I think one of them was perfectionism. It's like, all right, how do I understand what perfectionism means? And reading books that just really helped me feel seen. Just stuff that wasn't really told to me or taught to me or anything later on or earlier on. Um, so yeah, it was a lot of recognizing, learning about it, and then realizing the parts that's like, oh yeah, I have been doing that, and oh yeah, that makes sense. That doesn't help me. And then trying to instill the new stuff, but it's tough because when we have the way that I've explained it before is like our brains use like everything's habits. Like our brains love habits because it allows them to rest on autopilot. They don't have to do as much processing, and they can save that processing power for more complex tasks or more when it's more needed. And so if we have 20, 30, however many years of information stored in our brains of like how one way was done, learning about it and trying to instill a new habit in a matter of weeks or months is not going to override all that information.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because these are neural pathways now that are carved into our brains, the science says. And so in order to rewire, which I'm with you, I believe that we absolutely can, um, we have to unlearn. I love what you said about unlearning behaviors, unlearning, you know, who or relearning, finding your way back to who you were before the world told you, who to be. So that's cool that you were sitting with yourself. Do you have a favorite Brene Brown book? I love her too, by the way. She's awesome.
Yeah. I think I just got to go with Daring Greatly. It's
Yeah.
just the, I feel like the classic one.
Yeah. Yes, that is such a good one. For those listening who don't know, Brene Brown, she is a researcher, and she does a lot of TED Talks, and she's got podcasts. She just launched one with Adam Grant as well. That's like a powerhouse podcast I need to listen to. Um, and I think I said this already, but she studies shame, fear, vulnerability, and like shares her research. And she's just her book Daring Greatly is legendary. So if you haven't read it, I think we're both recommending that here. You do have a comment in the chat. Chris, we evolve for that calorific efficiency. Yes, and that reminds me, if you want to ask Alex a question, please feel free to use the chat. That is what we are here for. This is like a lived experience conversation. So if you see yourself in some of this, like definitely feel free to share, drop a heart. We would love to hear from you. I want to talk, Alex, about your series that you wrote on Substack and maybe a little bit about the story for how you landed on Substack. Because for me, I feel like it's been such a cool place. I get to meet cool people like you who just kind of get it or on similar journeys. So how did you land here and what's been your experience? And then let's dig into your articles a little bit because I think there's some really, really great work there and tools that will help other people learn themselves.
For sure. Yeah. So I mentioned a little bit ago that I started writing a book. That was part of my journey of coming back to myself. It was going on the me dates and thinking about like what did I like to do when I was a kid? Like what actually brought me joy? That how can I bring some of the those same feelings back into my life today? And I remember back in, I don't know if it was second grade, third grade, fourth grade, somewhere around there. I in school in class, we would break out into writing short stories, like short fiction stories. And I just remembered when I was reflecting on it that how much I loved doing that. It was just I feel like I would always I remember like looking forward to that part of the day and getting lost and kind of in writing these stories. And so I also had, like, I think starting from kind of that point, the seed had kind of grown in me that I thought it would be cool, like a life goal that would be cool to achieve to write a book one day. But it was just something like in my mind, just like this would be cool one day. And then I'd always kind of expected like that would be maybe something for after retirement or I don't know, who knows. But then I started talking with a friend, and he started mentioning books, and then someone else mentioned books, and so the idea I was in the mindset at the time of I still kind of am, but like of following the signs. And so when I had all these people talking about books, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write a book on like this perspective, this kind of philosophy that I've come to in this journey of mine. And so that and then I went started with that and I started writing that for a little bit. And then I went on I went on Susan Cain's, who's Substack, who is she's on here with the Quiet Life. But if anyone hasn't heard of her and you feel like you're an introvert, she has a super good book called Quiet. That it's essentially kind of like the power of introverts, but that is another book that made me feel more seen than like most anything that I'd ever read or heard or anything. Um, and so it was like her very first candlelight chat, I think she still calls them. And so I joined that, and it was for I joined a couple of those, and on one of them she was talking with her one of her friends who was also a writer, and they were talking about how today in today's world publishers want to see you have a following before they want to take on your book. And so it's like, oh, okay, well then I guess I gotta do that. And so I joined Substack because I only knew of Substack because I was on Susan Cain's um, Substack, and then from that I'm like, why don't I start my own? And then my Substack started as publishing portions of the book that I was still writing. I've since shelved the book for a bit, and I think that I'll eventually get back to it. But just the amount of time that goes into writing a book versus what I am now trying to build in this business, it didn't quite totally fit in the book. Feels like it would have been too small of a return on investment to make a living. So shelved it for now. Um, but yeah, that was how I got to the Substack and the experience. It has been great. Um, haven't had the explosive growth that you see from some people, but I haven't really totally tried for that. I'm just trying to build a following of people that actually truly want to read what I have to write and want to contribute to the conversation and want to actually kind of learn about themselves and make some change. And there's certainly a lot of people on here that want to do that.
Yeah. Um, Very cool that you found your way back to, I will say, grade school, your grade school self and you like to write. And I know, fast forward, you became a patent attorney, right? So I'm just curious, did you find yourself, you're probably writing a lot of legalese, but in terms of like writing about other stuff, did you find yourself still doing that? Throughout your life, or did you kind of lose that a little bit and come back to it? And then how did you become a patent attorney?
I I didn't really. I feel like once I hit college and whatnot, I stopped reading, stopped writing. I feel like that happens to a lot of people because you're just doing so much schoolwork. Um, So no, I don't think even like in high school or anything I really would like love writing. Um, but it was always you're always writing about stuff that you don't want to write about. You're always like doing homework about stuff. So yeah, it was I did not really find myself doing that much until I started journaling some when I started this whole journey back to myself. And then yeah, it's like I've always been fairly good and clear in my writing from being a patent attorney and like learning those skills in law school and whatnot. And so, very much different style of writing when you're trying to write a patent versus writing something that people actually want to read. Uh, yeah, and so it's definitely different, but I felt like I had a good base, and then I've just learned some things along the way of how to kind of make it more readable. Um, yeah, how I became a patent attorney that was just kind of didn't really know what to do in didn't really know what to go to college for, and got kind of sent in that the direction of well, I'm good at math and science, so I guess we'll go into engineering. Then or well, my dad and I went to this career fair where there was a patent attorney in high school, and so we went to go talk to that guy, and it was like, oh, it's a interesting idea. Maybe wasn't really the plan though. Went to school, just like didn't want to be an engineer. Did a co-op, and just like in my classes, like I don't really like this that much. I don't want to. I don't want to do this. Feels too boring and monotonous. So I came back to the idea of a patent attorney, and what drew me to it was the idea that you're not stuck in one particular technological field. You get to explore all different types of stuff. Like in my career, I worked on baby strollers, ethanol production systems, like automated vehicles, software for a variety of things. Um, just like all sorts of stuff, medical devices, tractors. So yeah, it was all over the place. That's what drew me to it. For the most part, that ended up being true. I did find like the problem solving and the solving a puzzle stuff was interesting and fascinating. Um, but yeah, it wasn't really there wasn't like a huge pull towards it. It kind of was though I don't know what to do and I need to pick something, so I guess I pick this.
Yep. I feel that it's far too common, and this is my personal perspective on this. We ask kids too young they wanna be, and we're not this is how like, I talk a lot about this on my Substack, but it's like a similar path of, okay, I was in HR and I did my comms and media bachelor's because it was a good foundation for whatever I wanted to do because I was young and didn't even know. So it's just kind of like, okay, we have to pick something. And then what's really cool is stories like yours where you're now it's like you're stepping into something that you really love. Not saying you didn't love being a patent attorney, but it's cool how we kind of find our way back to like everybody that I talk to, they're pulling from something from childhood that like they really, really enjoy doing. So I think your story is very cool. And gosh, I worked in corporate. And I can imagine attorneys have very, very long hours, more so than me and my HR corporate job. So, like major kudos to you, and also big kudos that you're, doing what you love now, which I think is we're seeing a lot of that, right? People leaving or wanting to leave that more corporate space and build something of their own, because like life is too short. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's a very, very cool story, and we're getting some comments in the chat. I'm just looking. I love Brene Brown. Atlas of the Heart is great. And Dito says, "Hey, thank you all. Thank you everybody for being here." Um, but yeah, what else? what else have you learned along the way, that you'd wanna share with people today as a takeaway?
Sure, yeah. I think that that's kind of a good lead into the series that I published, which I call the Gateway to Understanding Your Brain.
Yep.
Um, and I think that was the biggest shift, the biggest change for me, once I kind of came across this way of thinking in my own self growth journey. And there's three. There's three articles. I think there's like three foundational pieces to it, and that's accepting that our brains are naturally self-serving. It's the fundamental biological truth. Our feelings and emotions and our automatic thoughts are all chemicals that come from our brain, and our brain's not connected. My brain's not connected to yours. Yours isn't connected to anyone else's. And so the only thing that our brains can do is process things from the perspective of how things affect us, how they affect our survival ability, how they affect our well being. Um, and from that spot, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, that means that our brains are always trying to help us. They're not an enemy. They're always trying to help us. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're always helpful. And so that's the kind of second foundation part is recognizing that your sometimes what your brain sends, sometimes these feelings or emotions are not helpful because your brain can be programmed on childhood stuff, on media, like all the different things that your brain can be exposed to. Because your brain it hasn't been exposed to all the information in the entire universe and analyzed all of it to know what actually is best for you at any given moment. It only has the information you've been exposed to in your life, so it can only make the determination based on that information. And so a lot of times where it might not actually be helpful. Um, and then the third foundational piece is that uh, we, us, you, me, are not our brains. The way that I think about it is there's me, I have like my consciousness, it's like the essence of me. I have my brain and I have my body. And so my brain is a tool um, that I can use. And the fact that my brain is self-serving doesn't make me self-serving because I'm always the one that can make the decisions based on what my brain tells me. Um, all of the all of our feelings, emotions, automatic thoughts, they're all information signals that our brain is sending to us as warnings or influence or any kind of stuff that it's trying to do to help our survival, help our well being. But at the end of the day, my consciousness gets to make the decision of what to do with that information. And with those three things, I think it's a lot easier, one, to see that your brain is not an enemy, to have like a loving relationship with your brain, because it's you can think of the difference between one of your friends that you know that they are genuinely trying to help you, but something they did, like, it ended up making your life a little bit more difficult, versus a friend that just like directly, like, purposefully undercut you and made your life more difficult. And the difference between how you would feel between those two situations. And that's just a good example, I think, of like how a lot of people have been treating their brain as the person that's directly undercutting you in your life, whereas actually our brain is the friend that's generally trying to help you, but might sometimes just not be all that helpful in the end. And so it's thinking of our brains in that way, thinking of our emotions, feelings, automatic thoughts as just information. They're not, and we don't really need to judge information. It's just information that we can choose if we want to use, if we can choose that we want to ignore, whatever it is. And when you can drop that judgment or shame or whatever feelings that you have towards all of this information, it just makes it that much easier to actually um, become aware of, analyze it, understand like what does this mean for me, rather than something that you're just like, I don't want to think about this. I'm going to shove it away, or like, that's not helpful. I'm just like going to distract myself with something else. So that's the, I kind of lost my train of thought now. Never mind. I think I said both of the things I was going to say in that part.
Yeah, and Chris Young says, "Preach." And I agree. When So you talked about automatic negative thoughts, which is we call them ants, or I call them ants, because it's an easy way to remember. But when you get one, I think what you're saying is like having some courage to sit with that, right, and work through it, and not judge yourself. And it's not a neat. It is easy. It takes practice. It's not easy, is what I'm trying to say. But like you talked about earlier, in terms of habits, that's kind of a way to be able to do that. Talk to us a little bit more about your experience. Like when you get an ant or an automatic negative thought, what are you doing differently now that you are like in touch with your brain versus what did it look like before?
Yeah. So before, I think it was a lot of, you get the negative thought and you just believe it. Like it just is. It's just, this is what I thought, so this is what is. It's just a lot of that. Um, if and now how that I'm more in touch with my brain, the way that it didn't happen immediately, like you were saying. It takes some time. But the thinking now more is, I have this negative thought, and it's more of like a, huh, that's kind of a wild thing to think, or or something like that. It's like, huh, I don't actually believe that. Just kind of get curious about it. Like why, like that thought come up, and sometimes it's not necessarily a curiosity. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I just got hit by a dart or something, and like, oh, that kind of hurt, and then take the dart out and kind of like rub it a little bit, and it's like, oh, like we're okay. We don't actually believe that. Um, or something like that. Like I talk to my brain in like the third person too, where it's like, oh, we don't. That's not true, brain. Like we don't believe that anymore.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's such a great tool, and Dito, has a great point in the comments too. They said, "The more you try to shove away those feelings, the worse it'll bite you back later. You can't go around them," and I agree, and I think when you don't sit with your brain, like, this is how we develop, and I'm not blaming anybody, right? But we develop more unhealthy coping mechanisms. Like, I'll give you an example, and I have a talk coming up on this, but I'm 5 years alcohol free. Like, I used to use alcohol as a suppressant to push down a lot of thoughts, um, or ants, as we're talking about them, because I didn't know how to sit with myself and to process those things. So, like, it's amazing that you take yourself, out to dinner and take yourself to the movies and sit with yourself and talk to your brain. That's You have a healthy relationship with your brain now, right? Whereas before, it sounds like it was harder to work through some of those moments, and it's not easy, but like you said you've done therapy, talk therapy, which is good. I know people who do music therapy or journaling. It sounds like you found a lot of peace with writing and helping others, which is awesome. And Chris says that discomfort is the same as sore muscles after the gym. If you have the resilience to be honest with yourself, forgive yourself, and process the information for what it is, pathway forward can be far better. Alex is on point. Says you're on point.
And I agree, Chris. That's a good metaphor there. Thinking of it as the discomfort of sore muscles. I like that.
Yes, and hi, Steve. Thank you. He likes the term ant. Um, so talk to us a little bit more about you're in a coaching program now, right? Like, what does the next couple months look like for you? Where are you kinda taking your business? Excited to learn more about that.
Yeah, my coaching program training course goes until middle of July, I think, something like that. So learning all the framework and the processes, it's a lot. It's also a lot of unlearning of like unlearning the way that you like have conversations with people and recognizing it's a the like the foundational piece is recognizing when you're listening to the for the sake of how you're going to respond, just like constantly like I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm constantly thinking about how I'm going to respond back to it versus listening and kind of imagining that I am you saying the words, and like being able to sit in that place and like let you as the client lead where we're going, and I'm just kind of listening to you and reacting off of kind of what you're saying, and it's not the way that a lot of us are taught or have conversations with people. So yeah, so it's a lot of new skills that I'm excited to bring to help other people as clients, as well as just kind of using in my own life and just my own interactions with people. Um, See, I'm doing some practice sessions right now. I could probably take on one more practice client if anybody was interested in that listening. Um, but yeah, that it's I'm still in the point where I just quit in February and I'm still trying to like get the business off the ground. So not not filling the calendar with coaching sessions quite yet. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah. I love what you said about active listening, and you quoted Stephen Covey there, which I love. It's listening. Are they teaching Covey in your course? No.
No, no.
It's but it's a lot of the same, I feel like, just coming from different people. Yeah, you when you're in a conversation, you can tell when somebody is listening to respond to you versus actually processing and understanding what you're saying. And I think that's what makes a really good coach. So that's going to be an awesome characteristic that you bring to the table. I really believe all coaching is bespoke, like because everybody's situation is different. And so that skill's really going to serve you well. We have another comment. This is an engaged audience. So Leaf says, I have been giving them names based on their function, the ants. When something shifts, I promote them accordingly. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, I think that is a great approach. That's actually something that we've kind of been learning in coaching class too, is helping clients come up with like a short name for whether it's like a goal they want to achieve or limiting belief they have or just kind of like for most things because it just makes it so much easier to remember, um, rather than having to like stay some long thing again. So yeah, I think that's I've tried it a little bit myself, um, with mixed results. Um, it's kind of been something that like it's kind of with most things though. It's not that it didn't work. It's just that I do it for a while and then all of a sudden I don't do it one day and then realize 2 months later that I haven't done it in 2 months. but but yeah, and I do like that. I think it's great.
Yeah. And when you say do it, limiting beliefs, like talk a little bit more about what you mean by limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs are now I'm trying to they're
No,
kind of the
so
same. No, they're kind of the same thing. It's just when it goes into my head, I'm like, all right, make sure you make the distinction between a limiting belief and a perspective. But it's like I don't know if it really matters to make that distinction. It's just what we've been learning. But
yeah,
yeah, a limiting belief is something like, oh, a person like me can't do that, and then you just like internalize that belief. or or I don't know. I'm trying to think of maybe I'll try to think of some of my own, not my own examples, but
Yeah,
um,
share, that'd be awesome.
yeah, something along the lines of like, oh, I don't have the experience for that. Some like the imposter syndrome kind of limiting beliefs, or like no one's gonna like. Why would somebody care about my story, or things like that? Things you've internalized, things that you believe that you might not necessarily recognize that you believe that is shaping the decisions that you make in your life.
Yeah. How do you flip how do you flip that narrative? How do you flip that narrative for yourself to push? Because obviously you're here today. There are 16 people listening to what you have to say, and will be plenty more. And I think like you have a lot of great skills that you're going to offer as a coach. And yeah, I'm just getting that vibe here in our chat, right? So, um, but how, like, for the people who are listening and they get, because like a lot of people have imposter syndrome, um, how do you flip that perspective, flip that narrative? And I guess a second follow up question, like, do you believe that if you, when you do, or if you do, that's going to get you there? That's going to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, so flipping it in my experience and from what I've learned is first becoming aware of it. That's always the biggest hurdle is recognizing something that you believe in terms of that, and I feel like it's usually the easiest to come to that where if you're thinking of something that you want to achieve but haven't achieved yet, and you're trying to understand, all right, how why haven't I achieved this yet? Like, what are the difficulties behind it? And then you can kind of ask yourself, like, all right, what do I believe um, about like myself or about my abilities in terms of getting this done, stuff like that. That's stuff that that a skilled coach can certainly help people explore. That's what they're there for. Um, but then once you're aware of it, um, then it could be whatever your mode of choice is that you like. But I would suggest not doing it just in your head. I would suggest like writing it out loud, or sorry, writing it down, or saying it out loud of like write down that actual belief, and see how that lands and feels to you to kind of like get that out of your head, that like you believe this. And then when once that's done, flip it and like flip that belief into something that you want to actually believe, or something that you like. You might not necessarily have to believe it the very first time, but it's just what is that belief that you want to hold, and then write that down or say that out loud. um and then it's in the process of things, like every time you become aware of that limiting belief pop up, where you're like, oh, I'm like the thought, maybe an automatic thought comes up where you're like, oh, I can't do this, or whatever the thought might be. Have a plan in place, have it be like, all right, whenever that pops up, I'm going to stop, take a couple breaths, and I'm going to repeat the belief that I actually want to hold. um and it just takes practice and time. And it there are certain things, which maybe this isn't the best example, but I've also learned that there are certain habits, certain patterns of thoughts that pop up and whatnot that, like, no matter how hard you try, they're probably always going to be there. It's just like the biology of how your brain is, genetics. It could be something that's just so deeply rooted that your brain's holding on so tight and it doesn't want to let go because it thinks that you're going to be in great danger if you let it go. So there might be certain things where that's just always going to pop up. And the fact that you're trying to flip it and it never does can get frustrating. But those are the times when the things I'm talking about come into play, where it's just information. It's just like, yes, brain, I've heard that before, but that's not what I believe. Um, it's just the ability to not throw judgment on it, to just be like, oh, it's this alert that I got on my phone, basically, and I can just like swipe it away and do what I was going to do. anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And because and I agree with everything that you just said, and I was thinking back to the perfectionism and what you referenced earlier about you are not, um think about how I wanna frame this, and so you are not all of your thoughts, right? And then but y you said something earlier about you reminding yourself of all the good things. Like, if there's something that you may write down and and maybe you're like, "Oh, wait, that might I believe that one," but you have this other column of, like, all of the good stuff about yourself to pull from, regardless of what your brain is telling you about maybe that one thing. But I think especially for those of us, I don't know if were you labeled gifted as a kid? Forget if I
I was in the gifted program
Yeah.
in 3rd and 4th grade or whatever that was.
Yeah, okay, me too. I figured as much, and, I think also I was just having this conversation with somebody last night. When you are given that label too, um, and then you're moving through life and you're like it's a very misunderstood label of like, okay, this person like might think they're better than it because they're gifted and they're in the gifted class, but then you're showing up in life like feeling you have to be perfect at everything and you have to be good at everything, whether it's law, whether it's coaching, whether it's writing, whether it's HR, um, whether it's being a mom, a dad, all the different identities that we acquire in our lifetime. And so I think sometimes just sharing that to say sometimes that label can also show up in how we show up in the world, and we kinda carry that with us. So, I'm not sure if that resonates with you, and Chris wants to reach out to you, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that one, and I'd be happy to connect, Chris. So yeah, the what you're saying is I don't know. That's never really something I've explored all that much of whether like being in the gifted classes kind of followed me around in that way. I don't know. I remember it's one of those weird memories you have when you're younger that just like is feels so vivid. Of I just remember being in one of those classes, and I think they were talking about perfectionism. And it was one of those moments where, I mean, at that point in my life, I don't think I um, necessarily was, but I remember thinking like, oh, like I'm not that like who cares with like homework and whatnot. I kind of just like get it done and send it off, or and so I can go do something else. And I remember thinking all that, but then recognizing also that's like, oh, like maybe there is some of this here, or like maybe there is a little bit of like I need to get this right of and like not the fact that I couldn't would get frustrating. Um, but given that I was in 3rd grade or whatever, I didn't really know what to do with any of that. so that is some of that where I do remember that, and so maybe it is a deeply rooted thing from that has continued on. I'm not really sure, but where I will say I know that it has kind of similar vein has kind of popped up for me is the fact that it's like you would have so many people in the dating realm. You'd have so many people being like, "Oh, you're such this great guy." Like, "Oh, you're an attorney." Like, "Oh, you must have like the women like lining up for you," or like, just like, "Oh, you went to this great school," and it's like people telling you all these things, and then it's like, well, I haven't met anybody while everybody else seems to be finding that quickly. And then you just then I would just start like judging myself and feeling like there's something wrong with me, and I'm being told all of this stuff. The same thing with confidence. And I've read an article about this where I've realized that like there was so much stuff of people saying all these positive things about me, and then like I still didn't feel confident, and it's like what what's wrong with me? Like, why isn't any of this enough to feel good? Um, and what I wrote about in my article was kind of like was realizing that confidence is just an emotion. It comes and goes. It's like nothing that we can really like do. And the flip for me was um, flip like getting like ignoring self confidence and just finding more self acceptance, because that was actually a choice, a decision that I could make, and then confidence would just come and go based off of that foundation of self acceptance. Um, so yeah, so that's where that definitely has shown up in my life of like getting all of those comments of, it's like gifted or not necessarily in that term, but saying like all of the kind of the things that go around that, and then not seeing the results, and that like that disparity just really confusing me and making me feel like something's just wrong. Something is like my brain, like that was where like I would get in fights with my brain. It's like, what are you like, why are you doing this? Like, why aren't I feeling confident? Why aren't I like all of this stuff? So, yeah.
I I have chills. I have literal chills right now. No joke because um as you were talking, I'm thinking, well, here's Alex who's going through life and you're being told like, yes, like become a lawyer, that's great. Yes, do this, get the next certification or whatever it may be. And I kind of just relating a little bit because I like to do that a lot. It's also my neurodiversity of like, okay, I'm connecting dots here, but it's we tell kids very early on, like, perform for us. This is what success looks like. Like on paper, Alex can look, and you are very successful, right? You are very successful in terms of how society deems success. But like for you, like you're now on this path because you've sat with yourself from what I'm hearing from our conversation of, okay, like this is really what I want to be doing though. And so all these other things are great. But when there's like, I've had values misalignments in past relationships, in jobs that I didn't necessarily like love, but also there's the people pleasing, there's the let's just keep going. You're doing great. You have this HR degree, blah, blah, blah. But, but when you sit with yourself to do the work to understand, like, what is your why? Like, why is Alex here? Why is Jen here? That's like the deep stuff that you've done that I think if anybody's listening, it's powerful work. Um, because like to Alex, your point, it's unlearning everything that's been told to us. You're on this path and you're being this is great. But what do you want? What do you want to do? Colleen says yes, sing for supper, and self-acceptance also guides you to places where you're confident because you're not trying to be something you're not. Yes. I never wanted to jar. I don't know if you feel did you want to be you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's like, but people push you to be something you're not, and then you lose sight of like your identity of who you are. I'm not blaming other people. I'm not mad about it anymore. I was a little bitter. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'm kind of on a soapbox now because I got chills and I'm like, it's a story that everybody's saying is relatable in the comments and that you hear so often because we are asking kids the wrong questions. We're asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? We should be asking, how do you want to feel when you grow up? And also we need to make money, right, to survive in society, but like, how do you want to feel?
Yeah, I think those are all excellent points. And the one part that you said that I kind of latched onto was because it well, the thing that you said was, all right, I'm being pushed to all these different things, and like I have this success in terms of how society and other people are defining success, but what do I actually want? And that kind of moment was the birth of what I've talked about here today. It
Yeah.
was one contemplative afternoon in my apartment of just kind of like thinking things through, and then realizing like how many how many emotions and feelings and how much tension and frustration that I would feel would be because I felt the need to do something to please another person, or because I was afraid of how another person would react. And that's kind of where it was born, where it's like, what do I actually want? Like, let's drop all of this other stuff of like other people and whatnot. It's like, what do I actually want? So it actually initially started as aren't we all selfish people? Like we actually like everything that we do is actually like for our own good and well being. And I think there's an argument to be made, but um, what I landed on was more so that it's our brains. Our brains are self-serving and selfish, and what they do doesn't necessarily mean that we have to make the all the same choices as our brain would tell us to make. We can make whatever choice we want to based on that information.
Yeah. And to your point, the word selfish has a negative connotation from like a branding perspective, but is being selfish actually a bad thing? Because is putting other people before yourself and going through life, is that what we want to tell people to do? I'm getting a little like emotional now because I've felt that too. It's like when you're a people pleaser and you're constantly putting everybody else's needs before your own, is that like I being selfish is maybe a good thing because you can't pour from an empty cup. And I would say too, I was thinking when you were talking about um like just feeling a little bit behind from like, oh, maybe not having found somebody yet and dating. Some people just marry a resume. Like this is why our divorce rate is so high because somebody might see, okay, they went to Yale. I'm just throwing random schools out there. They went to Yale. They have a really successful job, so they're going to be able to support me. And like when there's that values misalignment, that's why people end up because they never really you can't know who you wanna be with until you understand yourself, but I think we're not taught those skills, to your point. Um, so, yeah, the work that you're doing is awesome, and I think being selfish maybe is not we have these terms, these labels, but is it really a bad thing?
The tagline that came into my mind one day that I've always loved is self care is selfish. It's just selfish done well. And that's always kind of stuck with me. That's like to say self care isn't selfish is a contradiction. To say that if you're doing something and you're taking into consideration what somebody else might think, what somebody else might do, like any of that, then that's not truly self care. Self care is simply doing whatever you need to do to respect yourself, listen to yourself, love yourself, and like feel good in who you are and in your own body. And so I'm a firm believer that that yeah, it's like selfish isn't the whole negative connotation of selfishness. I think just came from fears of being seen as a bad person,
Mm,
uh, and it just doesn't make you a bad person.
no, that's so beautiful. This is beautifully said. Um, yeah, I think I love what you said about self-care. Um, and it's like the most important thing that you can do is take care of yourself. Um, and yeah, I'm just like blown away. I'm just blown away by what you just said. Um, it's so funny. Substack brings you just like people that just get it. And that's what's I think so cool about this space. Chris said kindness just requires effort. Selfishness and kindness are not mutually exclusive. What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely for sure. You can like say there is a situation in which to take care of yourself, you need to say no to this invitation from somebody. Just throwing out some example. Like, you can very much tell them no to their invitation in a very kind way. You don't have to you don't have to simply just be like, "No, sorry, can't come. I really need to do this," or I don't know. I'm kind of losing my example here, but you can give the response of like, I really want to come, and it kind of like um disappoints me that I can't make it, but I've had such a busy week and I really need to kind of rest right now or something. Like, you can communicate in a kind way while also uh, kind of just acting for yourself first.
I love that so much. Self-care boundaries are self-care. Saying no, that's self-care. Um, and your point about rest, yeah, like, I kind of grew up with the belief that, like, if you rest, you're lazy, and that's just something that was kind of, like, ingrained into my head, and now I rest all the time because I can't operate without rest. We're humans. We all need to rest, but we're just shoved into this. We have school, and we have to learn very specific things and then pick a path really early and then go to work and listen to listen to everybody else boss us around unless you're in the top, like, 1%. And so saying no and setting boundaries is also not something we learn unless you do a coaching program or you go to therapy or you do the work on yourself. But I used to say yes to everything. I don't know about you, but I used to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just like the go-to for everybody." But then what happens is you have nothing left to give yourself. Um, I see you shaking your head. Was that your experience too?
Not Probably not to the same extent as what you're saying. And mine would I feel like mine I would always it was more so like the fear of missing out, the fear of maybe this is the time that I'll get this opportunity for something, where I would always be trying to stretch myself thin doing everything. Um, where I'd be going to something and it's like I didn't even enjoy myself that much here. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I'll say sometimes it's like I forced myself to something and I did have a good time. Other times I forced myself to something. It's like I didn't need to be here.
Right, right. So you kind of learned to say no to things that you don't necessarily want to do, or I heard you talking earlier, you gave the example of, the friend that, has good intentions and then the friend that's kind of trying to undercut you. I think when you're going through this journey of self-discovery and you develop the ability to say no and set these boundaries, it's unfortunate. This has been my experience, and I'm wondering, based on your example, if it's yours too, that you build a new network a little bit. Like, you have to say goodbye uh, to certain people that don't respect those boundaries, which can be also really hard to kind of work through.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I wrote about this topic too, and what I believe it comes down to is just self-respect. It's if you are trying to grow in a certain way and someone's not accepting that, trying to make you a different person, or whatever, starting conflict, whatever it is, it's just having the self-respect for yourself to cut ties or to reduce the interactions or whatever you see fit to keep your own life the way that you kind of want to live, want to feel.
I love it. I love it. Boundaries are tough to learn. They're so tough to learn. If you're listening and this is resonating, drop a heart because I heard from somebody else that this pushes um, Alex's chat out into the algorithm. And we're kind of it's been an hour and 8 minutes. It does not feel it does not feel like that at all. It just
Yeah.
felt uh
I had one more thing that I did want to say on the selfishness aspect.
yeah,
Maybe we can end on it if that feels right.
sure.
But the other thing that I've thought about and played around with is the irony that I see in it, because I believe it's a refusal to be selfish means you are selfishly depriving people of the truest form of yourself.
Wow. Wow. This is true because you're not being authentic to you. That's
Yeah.
Colleen says, "Well, I'm like speechless. I'm never left speechless. I'm just like over here chatting away." But um, that's pretty. That's profound stuff. I think that's a great place to end. And if you are listening, thank you so much for joining us. Definitely give Alex a follow or actually a subscribe on Substack. And then I think you were saying too, Alex, if anybody's interested in um what did you call it? Like a coaching
Oh,
relationship
yeah, a practice client.
practice client.
Yeah, I one of my practice clients has, I think their last session next week, so I could take on a new practice client with 5 free 45-minute sessions.
Awesome. That's great. Definitely reach out to Alex. And I'm going to be sharing this conversation probably tomorrow or by Friday at the latest on my Substack. I'd imagine Alex, you'll be co-posting as well. So if you joined late, because I see we have 20 people in here now, definitely feel free to go back through, leave a comment on what resonated. I think, Alex, thank you so much for sharing your story with people. I think it's clearly really resonating. You can tell from the chat. I'm going to need some decompression time after this talk because it was a deep one. It was very authentic, and I'm just really grateful to have had you on. So I'm excited to watch your growth as a coach and on Substack as well. So thank you again for being here and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I'm happy to have the conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure to let me share your platform for a little bit and to just have this conversation. So, we'll,
Yes,
well, yeah, we'll certainly be in touch. I'd be happy to do this again.
yes, you are welcome back on anytime. So thank you again. Again, make sure you drop a heart and follow Alex, and I will see you next time. Bye.